This is where I think a lot of folks get confused about, are views important? Are likes important? Are followers important? Those are all things that can be very important for different reasons, but you have to understand why.
I think like the first week I worked in the real estate industry, I got sent to a random meeting with a bunch of realtors, and I knew nothing about real estate at the time. But they saw that I was young, and I'm still devilishly young, but not as young as I was when I was 22. And they said, "Hey, Matt, we want you to teach us about social media for real estate." And what's fascinating is that 13, 14 years later in this industry, that's still one of the questions that I get every time I walk into an office. So for today's episode, I wanted to like pivot a little bit. We usually have on a top performing realtor, someone who's making all the money, probably driving the stereotypical BMW selling real estate. And many of them use social media well, but it's one aspect of their business. It's usually not their end all be all. So today we're pivoting, and I brought on a true social media expert who's an expert in 2024. And I know if some people will listen to this in 2025, I'm sure he will still be refreshing his knowledge and expertise then. But it's so important with social to stay on top of it and on top of new trends and what's working in our industry. So, Cole Jarvis, welcome to the show. You've started your own enterprise. You're working with some of the top real estate professionals in the country and delivering amazing results for them. That's how I got connected with you. So, welcome to the show, and tell us everything. How did you get started, and kind of where is it going now?
Yeah, no, thanks, Matt, for having me. Yeah, very excited to jump into this. I spend all day long talking about social media, specifically to real estate agents. So I like to think that I can demystify a little bit of it, because it does really end up being a very complicated and convoluted form of marketing, especially I think in the real estate space. So yeah, very excited to be here and very excited to chat with you.
Well, let's just start. So, when most people think about social media, they think about posting. And I think what we have to almost like retrain people on is that posting is only one teeny tiny part of it. And posting alone, especially if the content isn't literally amazing, really gets you nowhere. It kind of solves the goal of like it makes you seem like you're doing something. And when people look you up online, they're like, oh, yeah, there is something there. But most people aren't coming up with original content that's also interesting, like eye catching, and then valuable. So, how are you able to help your agent clients kind of get past that level?
Yeah, 100%. And I think too, and to kind of answer your first question, I didn't quite get to, a lot of what we do is informed based off of my experience working with agents at a brokerage. And then also I spent a little bit of time working at some tech companies that we'll talk about. But when we're talking about content, I think you kind of nailed it. There's a lot of folks, I think, who think social media is just a box that I need to check. And I just need to simply post, and, that's kind of the end all be all. But really, I think that leaves a lot on the table on the social media side of things, because the biggest benefit in most digital marketing is the ability to track and analyze the results that you've received. As long as you understand what those KPIs are, which I think we'll do a great job of explaining today, then you can start to make a strategy that compounds in and of itself. And that's something that really doesn't exist as much in many forms of traditional marketing. So it's funny that a lot of folks, I think, leave that on the table and just say, I just got to post, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then I'll feel like content. I've done my social media part. So what we do at Jarvis Media is of course very much so analytical and data based marketing. But the idea is to figure out the metrics that make the most sense. And this is where I think a lot of folks get confused about, are views important? Are likes important? Are followers important? Those are all things that can be very important for different reasons, but you have to understand why. And I think, we can start in any one of those, but as long as you understand what your strategy is and what KPIs are going to get you there, whether that's bringing on more team members if you have a real estate team that you're trying to build, or instead it's just getting in new clients, or maybe specifically new listings, or you just want to work with buying clients. All of those things that go into effect and are things that we can track, that we can use to create content that resonates with that sort of audience.
All right. So I like what I'm hearing so far. So basically, we have to start with a very tangible goal in mind, right? It's either hiring, it's new buyer clients, new seller clients, new investor clients. And I think the more specific we can get, the better. So let's walk through a couple of those. So if someone is looking, your average agent, when they call you, I'm sure they're looking for more listings because that is what everybody is looking for. How can we further break that down and build a strategy that's a little bit deeper?
Yeah, so and you're 100% correct. Most folks are usually looking for the listing side for a lot of different reasons, but I think in this climate in most areas around the country, that's what people are the most gravitating toward. When we're creating content strategy, I think it's important to think about one, what are your strengths? I always tell folks, there's 1,000 real estate agents in every market, and you're all selling the exact same thing for the exact same price. So we need to differentiate you first and foremost. And what a lot of folks end up doing is they just say a version or a variation of, I'm the best, look at me. And in reality, that doesn't actually get you any traction with an audience because one, it's not helpful to them, really. I mean, everyone's going to say that they're the best to some degree. And two, algorithmically, especially when we're talking about organic strategy and you're trying to get in front of the right folks, your content isn't going to get served to people because it doesn't provide them any value. So gone are the days of just blatant, work with me, I'm the best, or even just putting out reviews nonstop. That content is helpful to a degree, but not as much so on the front facing content that you're posting on social media, which is where people really put that kind of content.
So you're talking about like what people are doing wrong, but what could they do to do it right? Like that's what not to do. What do we do?
Yeah, 100%. So first and foremost, I think video is still, I think a lot of folks talk about it, but it's still very slept on. Short form video is by far the best medium through which to make content on social media. There's a lot of reasons why, but basically TikTok really changed the game. They showed that short form content can take a brand new company in the US. I mean, TikTok has been around for a little bit, but that can really make them a main stage player in the market of social media content. So now all the other platforms are competing with that and trying to be the short form content
So
platform.
how short? I mean, when you say short form content, how short is short form?
Usually around a minute to a minute and 30 seconds is what we're talking about with short form.
Okay, and then in terms of the content here, what is the content that these videos should be about? And then what is I guess how do we outline it? How do we format it, structure it so it actually gets views? Because I mean, for years we've been telling people, write down the questions your clients give you, repeat those questions in short form video. And we have hundreds of agents doing that, and it is good content, but the videos don't look that exciting. They're kind of boring. They are helpful, but they tend to not do well. They get lost in the shuffle.
Well, so that's a great point, though. So when we talk about doing well, it's important to note that these algorithms are so good. When we make that valuable content that really speaks specifically to somebody who's looking to list their home in the market that you serve, we're talking about a niche demographic, right? I mean, yeah, people might be thinking of buying or selling a home in the near future. However, most of the time, most folks are only going to make a real estate purchase maybe 2 to 3 times in their lifetime. So we're kind of trying to thread a needle there. And so when a lot of folks end up getting 100 views on a video they put out, they think that's inherently bad. And if you were a content creator alone, then that would be bad. But our goal here is not only the quantitative metrics of views, but also the qualitative metrics of how are we getting in front of the right folks. And so just to kind of establish, what is good content, if we're getting in front of 100 people who are really interested in our top 3 ways to increase equity in your home, that is far more helpful than creating some viral walkthrough of a home that most people who watch that video aren't even going to dream about being able to afford and not actually getting any business out of that. So
yeah, and I guess when we talk about that kind of comes down to most realtors get 90% of their business from their sphere of influence. So in essence, if you're posting a video on social media and it's three ways to do this in real estate, the people in your sphere who choose to watch that video in its entirety are almost self-selecting into people that are going to watch that. But when I talk to realtors, they usually are thinking about social media as a way to connect with new people. How are they doing that? I mean, your average agent, when they get started on a social media strategy, maybe they have 200 followers and friends, maybe they have 400. maybe it's a very active list that they're messaging all the time and commenting on and engaging with, and maybe it's not. I mean, how are they getting in front of new people with these kind of like, let's say, fairly average videos? These are not like professional content creators. They're
Right.
agents who are giving it the good old college try.
Yeah, 100%. And you still have to, and that's where it's important to show your face and to make video. I can't tell you how many folks I talk to who say, "I know I need to be doing video. I know I need to be on my content more often," but who still don't do it or who don't do it frequently enough. And when we say frequently, I would say at least 3 times a week. That's a really good starting point because one, you're going to become better the more you do something, but also it's not too much that it's going to take up your entire day. And that's a big thing that we talk about at my company is just how do we make content that's reasonable and not spend 40 hours a week making content. But if we're making social media content for a real estate agent who's trying to get in front of more and more folks, you really have to double down on what makes you specifically different and helpful to somebody. So I've talked to folks who are just starting out and they're like, I don't have any experience. Well, that's okay. You can lean into your strengths of not having to work with a lot of folks, maybe past professional experience and how that might tie in. And then also talk about how dedicated you are to the few folks that you will work with or that you do work with. Differentiation is the first step when you're making content because, again, there's 1,000 real estate agents all selling the same thing for the same price in your market. If you're not different, it doesn't really matter how good you are. So you have to
Sure,
stand
but
out
like
first and
I think when
foremost, and
most
that's where
realtors hear that, like I don't want to guide people in the wrong direction here. I think when most people hear
yeah,
you need to differentiate yourself in videos, they think about doing a video where they say, "Hi, I'm a great realtor and I'm different because." And those videos come off as
yeah,
so salesy and cheesy. Like how are they
yeah,
conveying the message that they're
right.
different, special and getting their personality out there without actually saying it? Like how do we possibly do that? Because I think that's the biggest
I
struggle, especially for
yeah.
millennial and Gen Z agents who don't want to do salesy videos.
Yeah, and I think that they're kind of on the right, path there. That's not in your front-facing social media content is not the space to be making salesy content. What you really want to lean with is those things that obviously make you different. One of which is your personality. So many folks get buttoned up and try to pretend like they're somebody they're not. And so what I always recommend is, hey, talk about your interests. Talk about what makes you unique. Talk about not only maybe 2/3 of your professional, but a third have that be more personalized content, what you're doing with your family, what you like about the area that you service. That just brings a level of authenticity that is really sorely missing in most strategies. And that also is just probably the best way to differentiate yourself besides just finally turning on the camera and hitting record.
Okay. So if someone's looking for buyers specifically, like what can they be doing other than just shooting these videos and posting them? Because I feel like there's a lot of people that are doing that and they're just not, let's say they're doing 12 of these a month. It's not translating into new business. So what are you guys doing to kind of take that to the next level? How are you helping them come up with the right type of content to shoot that I guess is either optimized for what the internet is looking for right now or optimized to take advantage of any like algorithm benefits that have recently come out?
Yeah, a big thing that we really focus on, and this is for a specific person, right? This isn't for every agent out there, but for certain folks, a hybrid strategy is what we like to approach with. And this is hybrid between organic and paid. And so, what we want to do there is make organic content that we know is straight to the point. It brings value specifically to the buyer or seller in that market that they're targeting. We do that by talking about things that will only give value to those folks, but then also following up with a targeting campaign to get in front of the right audience. So when we're talking about the paid side, for those who might not be familiar with this, we want to put a very nimble amount of ad spend behind this post just so we can get out of total reliance on the algorithm, because we don't want to go so vague and trying to make viral content that will just get in front of people for the sake of getting in front of people. That doesn't help anyone. We also don't want to make content that's so niche that it never gets in front of folks because our content's competing with Dwayne The Rock Johnson and your favorite sports team. That's kind of an impossible journey. And so by combining the two, and people can do this at home too, is experimenting with a little bit of ad spend behind an organic video that you already are spending some time in trying to make this a quality piece of content. And by targeting your market, and I wouldn't over target either. There's going to be a different amount of levels of experience with ads here. But in the beginning, just target it more vaguely and just target your radius of the location that you service. This is going to allow you to kind of break beyond the purely reliance on the algorithm and get exposure to a new audience who can then know, like, and trust you. And when it becomes time to work with you, if you've done your job, if you created content that helps to get that person ready for their real estate journey, they're going to say, why wouldn't I work with Jack the Realtor? I've been following his content for 6 months. He's helped me prepare my home and get ready to list at a proper price.
Okay, so let's go deeper into the targeting here. So
Yeah.
we all know we can go into Facebook and say, like, we work in Jacksonville, Mississippi. I can go in and say, hey, Facebook, target people. I think it's, what's the minimum now? Like 15 miles of, if you're in real estate and you have to click special category, like within 15 miles of this city. But then, I mean, you're targeting a pretty big area. There's a chance your budget's going to get eaten up in 10 seconds. What additional parameters are actually available for realtors to use right now? Because it is that protected housing discrimination stuff that are working.
Yeah, this is what, and I was working at a Coldwell Banker brokerage out in Los Angeles when they made that change. You used to be targeting zip codes, and now you can't do that anymore. And a lot of real estate agents thought that was kind of the end of the world when it came to paid advertising. I think it's great because when we're talking about targeting content on the paid side, there are many ways to target. And it's not just choosing the demographic or the zip code or the specific location that we want to get in front of. You also target content or target folks with the content you're creating. For those not familiar, ads on most social media platforms work as an auction system. So you're competing with other ads who are trying to get in front of the same audience. So even when you're just like how when you put out organic content, your content will only get in front of folks who the algorithm is pretty certain will get something out of it. Ads are actually the same way. So we want the content itself to be specific in topic. If you just want to target a specific zip code, make your content just about that. And the vast majority of the audience, even if you're targeting a larger, like 15-mile radius, will be at least interested in that zip code specifically because the algorithm of the ad side is getting you in front of folks who are interested.
So in order for the algorithm to, like, let's just say, like, we want to make it easy for the algorithm. Are we, like, do we need to, like, add a transcript? Do we need to say the city name 5 times in the video? Does that need to be in the title of the video? Like, how can we ensure that the algorithm gets it right and then figures out how to serve us, right? Like, I do a lot of SEO on websites, and the more keywords I put into strategic places, I know there's more of a science to it. Is the algorithm on social media the same? And what tricks can we use to ensure that we're taking advantage of the algorithm's power?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think first and foremost, the best thing you can do in general with social media is replace the word algorithm with audience. These algorithms are so strong now. If your audience finds value out of it, the algorithm will get it in front of them. So it definitely does not hurt to try and focus on keywords. If you're targeting a certain zip code, for instance, talk about maybe the most popular grocery chain there or the activities that are relevant to there. I think using keywords is always beneficial, even outside of just the more specific SEO practices. But that's also mostly psychological because it's resonating with the people who are interested in those topics. I think you want to be specific. The more specific and targeting of a niche demographic you can do, the better. Because whether we're talking organic or paid, it's going to get your content in front of those folks who are registering with that topic. So keywords are helpful. I would definitely include those. But at the end of the day, it's really a lot of experimentation with understanding the psychological aspect of your audience, which I think a lot of people assume they know, but they don't really have the hard data to kind of prove that no, folks actually really respond to this message versus this message.
So if someone hires you to help them on their social media, like, how do you do that for them? Right? Because I think a lot of people, when they first think about a social media helper, they think of someone who's just going to make content for them and then post it. And usually that's garbage because you don't know them, you don't know their business, you don't know their audience. You're making something that you've probably made for 30 other people. How are you guys doing it differently? And if someone wanted to basically, like, start trying to do it themselves and spend all the time on it, like, what does that process need to look like? From
Yeah,
coming up with the idea of the content to creating the content to posting the content to boosting that content.
yeah, 100%. It's the process that we take. We want to lean on our strengths as experts in the digital marketing space and folks who can make content, as well as the real estate agent space, which is, you know, your audience, you know, your market, you know, the folks that you want to work with, and obviously your specific skill set. So yeah, when folks are making content for like the same post that's going to be made for 30 agents, I highly recommend folks stay away from it. Our process is we want to make the recording process of the content as easy as possible. And so what we end up doing, soup to nuts, is study your market, look at your past social media content if you have any, to see what's been resonating so far and what other agents are doing that's benefiting that market. We also obviously have clients we work with across the country, and that gives us ideas into other markets that certain content topics, certain videos are resonating with. We take those, we send them to the real estate agent that we're going to be filming with, and we want to make sure that that passes the sniff test in terms of this is stuff that makes sense to you, that you want to represent, that you want your content and your brand to be about. Once that happens, they know what we're going to be talking about. Then we go into a 1 hour filming session once a month where we're coaching the person through the content. Most people we work with are not super comfortable in front of a camera. Our big goal there is how do we make this as easy as possible and just make it like a conversation? Because if we get your expertise and your knowledge in there, we can edit all of that into a nice piece of content that's actually going to perform very well. So once we have that recording, we take that, edit it down, do all of that kind of stuff that I think, people can do on their own. But most folks that we really help are the folks who get more benefit out of saving their time than trying to learn that skill themselves. And then we, of course, run our hybrid strategy. So that's where we're really ABC testing all of the content topics here, seeing what's resonating, what's actually performing well in terms of the views, but also in front of the right audience, what kind of responses and engagement, click through if we're running that kind of aspect of things, or simply lead generation, which is what we more so do in top of views. And then report that back, make sure our content in our next recording session is focusing on the stuff that's already worked. So we're constantly improving the messaging and making sure we're doubling down on what's actually getting the results.
What types of calls to action are you using? So obviously Facebook, Instagram offer 100 options, right? Like you can get messages, which I've always been a fan of. You can send someone to your website. You can do a lead form on Facebook, Instagram, which those I've had mixed, like you get like a ton of garbage information and a lot of fat finger clicking. Like what calls to action have you guys found to be the most successful for your clients to actually get them buyer or seller leads?
Yeah, fat finger clicking is a new term that I've just heard, which is amazing. But yeah, and I'm a big fan of lead form. I think that chats are great too, especially if you utilize a tool like ManyChat or certain CRMs like Go High Level can let you do that and follow up with folks. Any one of these can work. I'm a big fan of lead forms if you put in a little bit of friction. A lot of times people will create a lead form. And for those who might not know, this is simply an ad. You click on it, a small window pops up, and you're still in the social media platform like Instagram or Facebook that you saw the ad in. And you just put in a little bit of information and then you're kind of on your way. That's really beneficial because you don't have to worry as much about communication between like a website and the social media platform, which iOS updates and others have kind of made that a little difficult. So lead forms are great, but you have to add friction, or at least you have to be prepared to sift through a lot of, as you mentioned, really garbage leads if you don't. And what I mean by friction is we want their information. We want their email, their name, of course, and their phone number. That's crucial, of course. But also we need to quantify or qualify them on the actual lead form itself. Because when we're creating one of these ads, the goal of the campaign when you're building this out in Facebook Ad Manager or Meta Ad Manager is we want to get more leads. And as soon as somebody clicks the button and they're, get the thumbs up that that's a lead, the algorithm's going to start trying to get in front of more folks like that. So on the lead form itself, you need to have ways for the lead form to understand who are the right kind of people and who just clicked on this, but who maybe aren't the folks that we're trying to target. And so adding at least 2 questions in there that can really help to sift between the different audiences is helpful. The examples I always end up going with most often are, when are you ready to buy or sell? First of all, buy or sell is probably the first question, just because some folks are looking for specifically just listings. But also, when are you looking to buy or sell? We tend to find people who say immediately are much more qualified. People who say in the next month are decently qualified. If they say I'm looking for a home within the next 3 to 4 months, we found that can really end up being 4 to 5 years. That's really not a high level of intent that we really want to spend our time targeting more folks like that. So the friction element is what a lot of people end up missing. And the problem is you're just going to keep getting more leads that are just barely qualified, or just folks who are just clicking on ads for whatever reason but aren't really going to be quality leads for us. That level of friction really is the game changer between lead forms working or not working, in my experience.
So what have you seen? Like, let's talk about the return on ad spend, ROAS, as we call it. And again, like for anyone listening, and if we're getting over your heads, this is meant to be more of a masterclass on ads on social media. So in general, obviously, realtors pay to work with you, but if you're an average realtor and you're trying to do this yourself, or you hire someone, an agency like you guys, what do they need to spend usually it's a per day budget on Meta. What is the normal daily budget, and how many clicks will that lead to? How many leads will that lead to? And then how many closings 2 or 3 months out will that lead to? Like, what are the numbers that you have found to be true if you start with like decent content, 3 videos a week, and give us the budget and give us the numbers?
Yeah, so obviously we do a lot of different things with paid, specifically in lead gen. We've worked with a lot of different budgets, and your market is really going to influence this. If you're in a small market that doesn't have nearly as much competition for ads or digital ads, then you can get away with a lot less. But if you're in a bigger market like Seattle or Orlando or New York or LA, that's where you're really going to have to put a little bit more into it just to get the results that are really going to make a difference for you. For example, I mean, if you are in a really highly competitive market, I think the best budget that you can run with for a specifically, I want to get high quality and high quantity of leads. If you're using a lead form ad, I really recommend $100 a day. That's actually what my company uses. I'm, not targeting buyers or sellers. I'm targeting real estate agents. But I found that to be a really good starting point, because you can get through the learning phase, the process when ads are trying to figure out who the right people are to target, faster. And you can probably reduce your budget maybe about 30% after that and still see some really quality results coming in consistently. Now, a lot of folks don't have that kind of budget to work with. And so in that case, that's where we really like to lean into a brand awareness approach, where it's kind of focusing on the benefits of the shadow funnel aspect of social media, which I can talk about if folks might not be as familiar with. But this is basically how your content makes all of your other funnels, your other marketing efforts more efficient, essentially, because you're building the know, like, and trust in the organic content. Even if it doesn't look like your organic content is doing crazy well, you're still building that. And so that's what I oftentimes lean into with people who have a smaller budget. If you have like maybe $300 a month that you can use towards ad spend, that's where I really want you to focus on video content that really focuses on a niche demographic, and using that, maybe about a $5 to $10 a day budget to just get that circuited out towards your audience, your demographic, that's not purely reliant on the organic algorithm.
Okay, so let's say we were spending, let's just for easy numbers here, $100 a day. Obviously, the first 2 weeks, a little bit more of a learning curve. What types of clicks, leads, and closings are you seeing for people right now? And let's
Yeah,
say
generally,
let's say in a mid market, like we're not in New York and we're not in a podunk town in Kansas.
yeah. I mean, I think with $100 a day in like a middle sized like city or so, I mean, you can really expect, I think, on the top level, probably depending on how targeted you're trying to be. Again, all of these things matter, but just for easy numbers here, I would say you can expect 10 to 20 quality leads per month, or per week, excuse me.
10 to
Now
20
that
quality leads per week. Okay.
per week, yeah. Now that being said, and this is always a point that gets tricky, leads do not mean sales. You have to work leads. And this is so tricky. I talked to so many folks who are like, yeah, I threw a bunch of money at Facebook one time. I got a bunch of numbers, and then none of them turned into any kind of results. And then my fun kind of chip on my shoulder thing is said, I like to say is, okay, well, what did they say on the third call? And most time folks are, well, I only called them once. I'm like, well, you're really hoping that the stars are aligning perfectly, that you got back to them at a great time, that they picked up the phone and they were ready to have that conversation. I can't tell you how many times on the third, fourth, fifth call is when someone said, oh yeah, no, I actually really want to do this. Like, this is what I'm ready to kind of move on. But there are so many variables that we don't think about when we're reaching out to someone and they're not expecting. And so that's why I'm
Sure.
a big
Yeah.
fan
So
of,
you got
yeah,
to call them within call or contact them within 4 minutes of that lead coming in. Otherwise, your chances go down by
yeah.
400%. I think. So if you get
I would say
$100 a
60
day,
seconds. Yeah.
yeah, right. Like it follow the devil is in the follow up. So
Yeah.
$100 a day, 20 leads per week. That's 80 leads a month. What percentage of those leads are turning into like actual buyers or sellers with intent who will meet you in person, etc.?
Yeah, we've seen about 2 to 3 listings. For a great example is a client I have pretty close to where I am in Syracuse, New York, which is a medium-ish size market. We're getting about 2 to 3 actual listings per month with the content that we're putting out for him. That's, I think, realistic if you're spending that kind of a budget in a medium-sized city. But that being said, too, they're really good at that follow-up game. I can't press that enough. 60 seconds after a lead comes in, you at least got to send them a message saying, "Hey, I'm the person that you just responded to, and here's what we can do to help you." Just so that they actually remember who you are by the time you're actually really talking about the nitty gritty of their real estate needs.
And are you setting that up in like an automated way, or what does that look like?
Yeah,
That
in
first
that
follow up, 60 seconds later.
Yeah, that's it's really helpful to have that be built into a CRM. A lot of CRMs can do that, and that can be a message. Like sometimes folks can't quite get to the phone, then, especially if you're busy, and that might be unrealistic. At least send them an SMS message. I mean, an email isn't even really quite as valuable. That's what I would highly recommend. At least
You're
have
saying like
an
feed
SMS.
feed those feed those Facebook leads into your CRM, and then have your CRM do
Yeah.
some type of automated text message, call, whatever. Obviously, if you can get to that
Yeah.
first in person, if it's maybe during the day and you're around, do that obviously, but have some type of system set up for an automatic communication to come out 60 seconds later.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's really
cool.
helpful, and then really try to get a personal message to them or phone call to them as soon as possible too.
All right. What other big like secret things? Like let's go on the advanced level. Like either look at lookalike audiences, or what are some things that are
Mhm.
working really well right now for people that are doing this at a higher level or have the money to spend?
Yeah, I mean, I think a really fantastic thing that you can do is promote. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, definitely in terms of if you're not familiar with building custom audiences or using lookalike audiences, if you've been in this space for a while, you probably have a list of a good amount of leads that you've reached out to in the past. I 100% first and foremost would make a lookalike audience and then retarget that through if you're running any kind of ad campaign. I think that's kind of a given. I think a lot of people are familiar or at least have heard that before. But if you're not doing that, highly recommend it just because there's only so much follow up that you can do and we're all human. It's very hard for us to consistently go back and forward. I know all of us have had an experience where we have a lead that we've talked to or reached out to, and then we find out that they worked with a competitor, and we're like, "Wow, what the heck?" Like I thought we had something. But in reality, yeah, lookalike audiences are massive. I think too when we're talking about branching out, I'm a really really big fan, and some people are becoming more aware of this too, of becoming a someone who makes content about hotspots in your location. It feels sometimes like, wow, I'm spending this time maybe advertising a local coffee shop or going to like, my favorite like barbecue place nearby. That feels like, oh, that's not, I'm not talking about real estate. What's the benefit there? It's because you're trying to get in front of that new audience and you're taking something that has intrinsic value in people's hearts who are in your location and you're connecting it with you. And just the process of making content, even if it's not talking about you as a real estate agent, that is going to make a big effect on the kind of people you can get in front of organically when you post a piece of content that is about real estate. But also, of course, too, when we're talking about algorithmically, even on the paid side, people will just have a psychological remembrance of you. And that is a huge benefit, again, when we're talking about 1,000 competitors in your market all selling the same thing for the same price.
It's kind of like, I like to say, like, I like to subscribe to like 5 or 6 community newsletters. And then
Mm-hmm.
every Monday I get it and I look to see what I think is cool. Like what new businesses are opening, what's happening in town. And like in my market, I just saw that The Princess Bride, one of the best movies ever. And if you think I'm wrong, then you're wrong. It's coming to our local symphony and they have the original star of the movie, Carrie Ellis, who's coming. And so I'm thinking this is super cool. Anyone that was born in the 80s or early 90s is going to think this is cool. So I'm putting this in my client newsletter. I'm putting this on social media. And shockingly, it's resonating with people like me. And I think everyone can do a version of that. Subscribe to as many local newsletters as possible. And whenever you think something is cool, that's your content for that week. It's not real estate related, but it's community related. It keeps you kind of top of mind, right? It keeps you in the conversation. And then when you post something the next day, all of a sudden your stuff's still there. They're at least going to be willing to give you a chance on the boring real estate stuff because they took a chance in you and it worked out with the fun stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it, and I think also too, just a nice little hack that some people feel really. I always get mixed opinions about this, but one of my favorite things is if you know you need to be making social media content and you're really struggling, maybe either just you have psychological barriers that are stopping you from doing it, or you're just very busy and you're trying to find time in your schedule. A nice little hack to just kind of get started, I love, is on Instagram or Facebook. Share other real estate agents or other folks in your community, which can not just be real estate agents, but I do love sharing other real estate agents' advice that they give on their social media content if it's good, and just sharing that to my page. And it sounds so counterintuitive. Yeah, because so many people are like, why would I promote my competition? But the thing is, if especially on stories on like Instagram, for instance, you can't have too much of that content. Posts are different. Stories, quantity is kind of the name of the game there. But if you put out a lot of content that's helpful information, even if you're not the one making it, that's still going to increase the chances that when you make a piece of content, people are still clicking on your content. They're going to get fed your stuff by default because they've watched so many of your videos. So it's a nice little hack. If you're not doing anything right now, you can at least start to pave the way for when you do make a piece of content. And also you deposit some goodwill, which I think is always an underutilized tool at your disposal.
Well, and I think I really want to dwell on that for a second because this is not what people think of when they think of real estate marketing on social media. But when you break down your job to what works, it's being a connector in the community. So if you're a realtor, take your last 100 customers and number one, make sure you're following them. Because if you follow them, 50% of them will follow you back. And then they will see your content, which will help the algorithm anyways. Number two, look at where they work. Add that place of work on social media. And then if they post something interesting, share it. Add some context to it. Share it with your people. It'll keep you updated. If you notice that your client changed jobs on social media, that's even easier than getting a lead. You can just call them and make sure you have a meeting going on with them. There's so much research and data on social media that you can use to have an effect that, like, I would say that like social media is really only going to work for you if you somewhat enjoy it and you can commit some time to it, right? Like if you know you can't do those things, you can put a lot of money behind it and maybe get some leads that your team can call, but it's a different vibe. So Colt, I've gotten a ton of great information from you. If someone, didn't want to necessarily start this from scratch and wanted to employ your services, how could they get a hold of you?
Yeah, 100%. JarvisMediaCo.com is a great place to go. Also, we like to just talk to people on the phone, see if we can actually help them. We're really big about not just trying to work with anybody, but trying to work with folks that we can actually have a relationship with for a while. So feel free to reach out to us at 315-751-8103. That's probably the quickest way to just get somebody, most likely me, on the line to help you out and at least put you in the right direction, even if we're not the right fit for you.
And I just want to reiterate, I've never been a huge fan of hiring agencies to help with social media because most of them are big agencies and they're providing a mass market service where you get nothing original. What Cole's offering and what the type of agencies I like are offering are people that are actually going to ask you about your business in particular and help you with your own opinion and goals create stuff that is original and unique to you. That's what you need to look for if you're going to hire someone. It doesn't need to be Cole. Cole's perfect for you, but it could be someone else. You need someone that's going to interview you. If they don't interview you, and they don't ask questions about you that are deep, they are going to suck. And I would reiterate that 1,000 times over. And lastly, anyone listening to this who is still paying a service to post random pictures of pretty houses to their social media, and that is what your strategy is, I want to jump through the podcast and punch you in the face because that is the most garbage marketing. It makes our industry, frankly, look terrible, right? It makes it look like you're out of touch because usually those pictures are homes that aren't even in our market. They're almost always $1 million homes. Your clients can see through this, guys, right? Like people say it's better than nothing. I disagree. It's worse than nothing because it shows that you're not doing anything original. So please put some heart behind your strategy. Even if you're just going to use social media to listen and look for opportunities, that is better than poisoning the well. So Cole, thank you so much for being on the show today. And everyone listening, I need you to go and leave a review on the podcast store. If you don't do this, people like Cole don't want to be in the show. And if you want a meeting and you want to talk marketing one-on-one, hit me up. My information is always available to you. And if you couldn't find me, I'd be a terrible marketer. Thanks, guys.